Hello guys, welcome to the video lesson number 1 of the video of the week, number 10. Um, well, thank you very much for coming until here. It's week number 10. We're almost done with the semester. We have a couple of semesters more. I think that you have allowed me to arrive in this way to your places and corresponded with your works, for which I am really thankful. Um, well, guys, remember that we have the essay coming. I think that we're going to start working on essay writing most likely next week. That is something that we are going to be working on really hard. Hopefully everything that we have talked about so far. In terms of transitional words, punctuation, everything else like the type of paragraphs, narration, persuasion, and all these different things may be conjugated in all these different essays and, let's say, texts that you are going to write for the end of the semester. Well, I would like to start the class as usual by sharing a poem with you. This time is like in some other cases, and I have done this a couple of times before. This is going to be especially important because we are going to derivate one part of the assignment number 1. Well, actually, we're going to have only one assignment from now on. I think I have decided to put them all together in a single one to facilitate certain things, right? We're going to have, let's say, 2 parts for the assignment, and we're going to base it on this, okay? So this is by Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, that, as probably some of you know, was a religious woman, a nun, and was pretty young and pretty intelligent, pretty creative, and of course it was quite difficult to be her in her time, right? It is nowadays still women have a lot of difficulties, problems, obstacles to be exactly what they want to be, and well, everybody. But I'm talking specifically about women. So imagine that back then, being a person like Sor Juana was may have been a little bit difficult, right? So this is part of her redondillas, that is a specific type of poem, and I am going to read just a couple of the stanzas that are here because it's a longer poem. It's about 65 verses or so. I'm going to read just a couple of them, okay? Hombres necios que acusáis a la mujer sin razón, sin ver que sois la ocasión de lo mismo que culpáis. Si con ansia sin igual solicitáis su desdén, ¿por qué queréis que obren bien si los incitáis al mal? Combatís su resistencia y luego con gravedad decís que fue liviandad lo que hizo la diligencia. Let me check a couple of one over here. This one over here. ¿Cuál mayor culpa ha tenido en una pasión errada? ¿La que cae derrogada o el que ruega ha decaído? ¿O cuál es más de culpar, aunque cualquier mal haga, la que peca por la paga o el que paga por pecar? Dejad de solicitar y después con más razón acusaréis la afición de la que os fuere a rogar. Bien con muchas armas fundo que lidia vuestra arrogancia, que en promesa e instancia juntáis diablo, carne y mundo. Not easy to read this. Sorry for the little mistakes over here because it's so musical that sometimes you get carried away with certain words. I like it very much, the mix sometimes makes me make mistakes. Let's say that in general terms, the poem, and if you read the whole thing, you will see, sort of criticizes this way in which women have always suffered like criticism. Yes, like if you are a little bit outside of the canon of morality, if you indulge yourself in certain pleasures, in certain liberties, name it sexual, name it academic, name it of your behavior, who do you date, who do you go out with, the relationship that you have with other people, family, friends, etc. So if you're a little bit too relaxed on that side, so women usually receive this criticism or this label of being immoral or being too relaxed or being even easy women, right? These different things. But then if you go on the other side and then you are maybe too shy or too silent, if you just stay all the time at home, if you don't have like a lot of relationship, exchange, socialization, so you are also criticized for being unfriendly, for being too serious, for not, let's say, enjoying yourself enough, for not sharing what you are with other people, right? So, as you can see, she started criticizing this in many different spectrums, in many different aspects. And, well, there's even at the end some sort of comparison, for example, of something related to prostitution, no? There's always been, especially by the church, right, from which she is part, so you can imagine like how difficult would have been like to criticize even what your own church, what your own employer or activity does, no? And it's that, for example, this sort of people, including prostitutes, sexual workers, are criticized as sinners. They are labeled as immoral people by church, for example, right? So she poses over here a question, right? Like who is more of a sinner? Like both are let's say sinners, but who is more of a sinner? The woman who accepts, who exchanges some sort of sexual service because of money, or instead of money, or in exchange of money, sorry, or the person who pays for it. Yes, like who is more guilty? So there's a lot of reflections about this until in the end there is a really interesting closure over there. Okay, so again, sorry for the mistakes in the reading. But you can find very easily this poem online. You can check it out in case that you require to read it a little bit more slowly and dedicate it some more time. Remember, we're going to use it for the assignment number 1. Okay, so when I explain it, I'll let you know exactly what to do. Well, guys, last week we started working on persuasion. There were some general definitions and some general ideas that we discussed. So what we're going to do today, or we're going to start with this, is by analyzing the characteristics of persuasion. So if you go, you can be so kind and go to the slide number 34. We're going to see a couple of characteristics over here, right? So this is basically to know or to help us classify something or some text, some paragraph as being persuasive or not, right? So let's start with this first characteristic, sorry, that is object, right? So if you see over there, it says any controversial, doubtful, or problematic topic that admits different ways to be treated. It can be formulated as a question. So we're always going to have an object for our persuasion that is going to be basically the source of any sort of discussion, argumentation, disagreement, counter-argument that we are going to have, right? And the first of all, or the first characteristic, or the first adjective that you have over there is controversial. So normally, if you are going to persuade somebody, it is because it is a controversial thing. And what does it mean, controversial? That let's say people do not normally agree about it. Yes. Um, if you're going to try to convince or to persuade somebody that there is a formula for water that is H2O, or that there are certain mathematical principles, or that somehow water boils at a certain temperature. Well, that is not controversial. Like, everybody knows that, or most of people know that, and you can prove it, you can demonstrate it. Yes, so you don't really need to persuade anybody that that is true. Well, nowadays is interesting how we have had to persuade people about vaccines and the shape of the earth, and you know the existence of viruses, things that apparently we take for granted, right? That we don't need to prove. We need to persuade it one more time. We're going backwards sometimes. But in general terms, like, all of this has been already proved, scientifically demonstrated, by experience, by a lot of different things. So it's not necessary to do that. So you need to sort of persuade people about something that is controversial, doubtful, right? There are certain doubts about this topic that you will discuss, or something that is problematic. Yes, so probably it is not even controversial or doubtful, but it may be problematic because it can generate some different sort of impressions or ideas about what you're going to do, right? So those are really, really important. No, so you can have the possibility in your persuasion to um, add different perspectives, different ideas about this particular situation, and in that way be able to provide, different instruments in order to argument that or to persuade that. It says that it can be formulated as a question, right? Well, that is the first characteristic. The second one is the existence of at least one locutor. We can have more than one, right? But we need minimum one. And basically, it's either a person, a collective, an individual that is going to manifest a perspective. Yes. So remember that the first part mentioned that it admitted like different perspectives or different ways to be treated. So he's going to manifest over this perspective, a way of seeing and interpretation, right? And is going to adopt a position. This is very important, guys. Yes, for persuasion and for your essay, it is fundamental to adopt a position. Yes, so let's say that one more time we're going to have the typical topic of abortion or drug legalization. So you can present somehow characteristics of both, of legalization or prohibition, but from the beginning, you yourself, as the writer, as the person who writes the essay or text, you must have a position. Yes, you must say yes or no. Yes, and you are going to defend that position. Yes, everything that you're going to use in your persuasion, in your argumentative text, is going to be towards this purpose of supporting your point of view. Yes, if you agree that abortion is something that should be allowed, so everything, all your instruments, all your resources will be implemented to convince your reader that that is your position. Or if it's the opposite, that you think that that is not correct, that it's something that should not be done, well, again, all of your resources and tools should be directed to that. Well, there's a second part over here that is interesting. It says presents an opinion by means of modalized and axiological, it says axiologic expressions, right? So this locutor that I mentioned, it could be a person, a collective, a group of people, presents this opinion. Remember that, sure, it's an opinion, but this opinion is fundamented, right? It's supported by means of modalized and axiological or axiologic expressions. So this modality or modalized had to do with that, with different modes, different alternatives. So normally you don't present like only one reason, no? You present different reasons, and those reasons may have different modalities, right? Let's go back to the abortion thing, right? So you could say that you agree with abortion for life of the baby, for life of the woman, right? That should be primordial, should be primordial when balancing the fetus versus the woman. So that has to do with, let's say, a health issue, but also you can talk or introduce another modality, such as, for example, the economic factor, how a person without resources or possibilities for a job will struggle really hard when having a baby, right? And also you can include another factor. So we have, let's say, health, economic, and we can have like a moral factor, yes, in which that nobody should be forced to do anything they don't want, yes, like there's a freedom, a minimum freedom right over there. You see, 3 modalities. Let's go on the other side, yes, let's go on the part of somebody who is against abortion, yes. So that person could talk about, for example, religious issues that are valid, of course. Let's say that there are certain characteristics that if you live by, a particular religion, it will be something not acceptable, right? So that's a religious modality. Or you can think about something scientific, right? Or health related as well, in terms of the psychological impact that this may have on a woman or the father or the surrounding people, etc. So you see, same idea, even for pros or cons, we have different modalities. And this axiologic has to do with values, yes? Axiologic is anything that is related to values that you may have or may interpret, and well, we have already mentioned different things, such as the religious values, or such as the psychological value that may be positive or negative when having all these different things. Good, let's go into the next slide, and we are going to have here the character or tone. This has to do more with the nature of the speech, of the discourse that you use during the argumentation. Make it, be it like oral or written, right? So we have this discourse that is normally polemic. We have already mentioned that it was controversial. Normally it's dialogical because you need to exchange, yes. It is based in the contraposition of 2 or more postures, right? So normally we have these 2 postures of yes, or pro and con. So if we go back to the abortion thing, we have people who support it, we have people who are against it, right? But then it has 2 or more, no? So for example, there are some subdivisions. There are people who say, okay, abortion, yes, but only in these 3 different instances that we have in our constitution, for example, right? In our law, let's say. And some other people who say, okay, no, abortion, not at all. Other people who say, okay, abortion, but mothers should pay for it. Others say it's like, okay, abortion, but it should be free and it should be legal, etc. Right? So as you can see, there are 2 positions or some sub-positions or categories of these different things, right? Normally, as you can see over there, enunciates are formulated in relation to other enunciates. So we normally react when we're talking about persuasion to contradict some other enunciates or some other declarations done by somebody else. So if somebody says that a certain movie is really bad, so probably you would say, no, but I like this part and it was good and I prefer it. Or in this case, if somebody says, okay, I love this movie or I hated this movie, you can agree. Yes? So in this case, enunciates are formulated in relation with another enunciate, being to support, to contradict, to select a middle position, or something like that. Now, here there are like a lot of different possibilities. There are even more than the ones that are written in the presentation. But here are some that we have, right? Opposition, that is basically saying this is like a modality of persuasion that is basically contradicting what other person said, right? Contrast, like making a comparison between what the other person said and what I have. So let's say, for example, somebody who says, Apple is or the iPhone is really good, is the greatest phone that I had that you can buy. So a contrast argument could be, okay, but I have I don't know, an Android or Huawei or whatever, right? And they do more or less the same thing, and they are way cheaper, and I don't know, they have long-lasting battery or something like that. So that's a contrast thing. Now, the attacks that can be, of course, let's say aggressive in some way, or we can call an attack something that it's polite and good, but nevertheless is attacking certain things, right? So, for example, let's go back to the iPhone thing. Let's say that somebody says that it's somehow a very good phone, that it's really aesthetic, and that it's really nice to have one, yes, and that you should buy it. And then if you attack that specific declaration, you could say that it is maybe a little bit aesthetic, but you can sort of have some other phones that are more beautiful, more nice in terms of design, that sure that it may be efficient at certain levels, but it is not very compatible, yes. So you're attacking is one of the declarations that the person provides. Now you can say finally, okay, you are telling me that I buy this phone today and it's very expensive, and then in 2 or 3 months there's going to be another version, and mine is going to be a little bit obsolete in that way. So it's an attack. Let's say a contradiction, or let's say a way to refuse the arguments that you provide. Yes. Then we have the authorization. Yes, that is basically reacting to the enunciate given by the other person by saying that he or she doesn't have authority for that. For example, let's go back to the aversion thing. So let's say that somebody will say, okay, aversion should be forbidden, it should not be legal because people, or especially in this case women, may have psychological consequences. They may feel guilty later on. They felt they did want to have the baby. They feel that they have made something wrong, they have done something wrong, sorry. So that is the argument of the person. So the authorization will be, okay, but why do you say that? Are you a psychologist? Do you have any experience into examining these reactions? Do you have statistics? Do you have something that proves that you're saying what you're saying, or it's just only chit chat? So this is the authorization. You see, not of the argument, but of the person, like saying you don't have the authority for saying that. Provocation, that of course it's, let's say, a tactic that should not be done, but it's valid and may be effective or not depending on how much do we allow the other person to provoke, So this may be about insults, so it may be about vocabulary that is aggressive or different things, right? This shouldn't be part of the persuasive let's say elements, right? But sometimes people just let themselves be affected by it, so that's why it is included. And finally, well, something that is pretty evident over here, that is the objective, the target, that is to cause adhesion, like to cause that other person or other group of people think sort of the way you do, or that they are convinced of your arguments, and let's say your idea or your proposal can be accepted, yes, and somehow can be valid in the eyes of the other person. Most of the cases, let's say if the positions are very strong, so you're never going to reach an agreement, never, but probably you can reach certain consensus, and that has to do with the positioning and the arguments that the interlocutors may have. Let's say that is going to be the most important. No, like it's not about who wins the discussion or who is the winner of the debate. It's more of a reaching, hopefully, a common agreement or something like that. Okay. So these are the characteristics of persuasion. See you in the next video, in which we are going to talk about structures of persuasion that are quite important, and that will be part of the second part, or the second, let's say, activity in the assignment for this week. So thank you very much. See you around. Bye bye.